Hi everyone, how are you all? For those of you who don't know who I am Sonal Dave, award-winning Celebrant, Toastmaster, and public speaking expert. And today I just wanted to come back on and tell you about my launch, of course. For those of you who've seen all the exciting posts, the books are in the background. So there's a journal for adults and a journal for children, and it's about taking them through their day, whether that be a good day, a not so good day, or even just they want to just relax, maybe doodle, color in a mandala. Maybe they want to use the back pages and just do some write down some words that have been quite helpful to them that day. It's their journal, adult or a child, to help them through the journey of life. And as we all know, it's difficult, so anything that can help them has got to be a good thing. Now, I'm really excited because I have the wonderful, awesome, and very beautiful Reena Anand who's going to join me, and she's going to tell us all about who she is and what she does. And then I've got some questions that I'm going to be asking her. So we're going to have a little round of applause, and we're going to have a little drum roll, and then we're going to invite Reena on. Hello, Reena.
Hello, thank you for that.
And we did say that we might have Neo join us, and he's decided to join us. This is pretty normal for us. So I'm just going to rewind that again and go, hi, Reena.
Hi, Sonal. It's great to
So,
be here.
oh, absolutely. Tell me who you are, because all of our viewers who are watching now and will be watching later, they want to know who you are and what you do.
So, yeah, I'm Reena, and in a nutshell, I used to work as a lawyer and then as an ombudsman, and I specialised in cases relating to the Equality Act, in particular, disability and race discrimination cases. I'm also the mum of two children, the eldest of whom is autistic. And last year, I decided I would leave my corporate career and focus my energy on autism acceptance and awareness in Black, brown, and ethnically diverse communities. And that's what I do now.
Why did you decide on Black, Asian, minority, ethnic? What made you decide that's what you wanted to do?
So initially, it stemmed from my own lived experience of being a parent to Evie, who's now 9. I couldn't see anybody in my community who had an autistic child. And so I genuinely wondered if I was the only Gujarati Indian woman who had ever had an autistic child. And as I had more conversations with people, I learned that, there are lots of, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic autistic children. We're just not seeing them, and we're not hearing from the parents. And there's lots of reasons for that, which maybe not for today, but it's not all about the parents. Society itself is not also designed to promote Black, Asian, and minority ethnic voices either. But I could see that there wasn't enough representation. And actually, the more research I did, which demonstrates that the highest prevalence of autism is in Black, Asian, and Chinese communities, there's a real disparity there. And I wanted to lend my voice to amplifying the voice of these parents so that we can give our children everything they need to grow and thrive and be happy.
Thank you. And from your own experience, from when, or maybe even before, Evie was diagnosed, would you be happy to share a little bit about that journey?
So up until Evie was diagnosed. So he got diagnosed at the age of 4.5. And he was my first child. I'd miscarried a child before. So there was already, for me, I felt a lot of pressure on being able to, I guess, prove I could have a baby, to be crude. And so I put that pressure kind of on myself. And so when Evie did come, I had already envisioned this child. So, my husband is, a very successful optometrist. I was a lawyer. On paper, this looked like the model arrangement to bring into, the family unit an Asian baby boy. And in my head, I thought, right, he's going to visit the temples that, like we do, and know all the prayers. He's going to be obedient and polite. He's going to respect his elders. He'll speak multiple languages. He will be like this. So I'd birthed this child in my brain before he'd arrived. And then he came, and he was very different. His speech sounds were delayed. He was very demand avoidant, wouldn't listen, wouldn't get on with other children, didn't like loud noises, particular foods, and the list goes on. And I perpetually felt that I was failing as a parent. And it never occurred to me that maybe he was just a bit different. And the narrative around me as well from the community was, oh, he's really active, isn't he? Why don't you do some massage? Oh, he's quite different. Like he's quite boisterous, and I'd feel shame because I thought my child wasn't conforming. And then when he went to nursery, and it really, the feedback started coming that, he'd either been aggressive, or he'd broken things, or he'd refused to play and interact, and all of that. Slowly, that took us to the point where we thought, okay, something's clearly not right. We started the journey of seeing various professionals and eventually getting his diagnosis.
It's quite, I mean, coming from the Asian community myself, it's quite interesting how, little children, oh, tell them to shut up, tell them to sit down, tell them to go in the other room. Oh, we can't talk as adults. There's too much noise. It's, as you said, it's almost like there's an expectation on how we should be in the family, and not only how we should be in the family, how we should be when we go to somebody else's family, isn't it? As soon as you walk in, as women, we should go straight into the kitchen. I almost feel like I need to turn up with my marigold gloves, and just go, I'm here, like I've got my gloves. But it is just how society is for us as Asian women, isn't it? And I think sometimes these expectations need to kind of be thrown away, like there, black bin, put the lid on it, and actually just let people be people.
Yeah.
Because, it's not women in the kitchen all the time, and it's okay for children to be a bit boisterous and a bit loud, but a bit more understanding in the world, I think, is just so important. But what I have learned, and I'm sure you have, that unless we talk about it, and unless we make more people aware, and we do some education, there isn't going to be any understanding. But that understanding needs to come from the top down. We can shout as loud as we want, but if it's not understood by medical professionals, if they're not understanding that it's going to be different for somebody from the Asian culture to somebody from the Caucasian culture to somebody from maybe the Black culture, it's going to be different. It is different. We all know it's different in the different cultures, and it just needs to be more understanding. But tell me now, Evie, diagnosed, how is it for Evie now?
He's amazing, and that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. I just love him so much. I'm so grateful for him, to be honest, because I feel like he has made me a better human. He has forced me to really question my values and beliefs and why I do the things that I do. And he's doing really well. So yes, in the early days, we did have a lot of difficulties with behavior, with aggression, speech and language difficulties. I used to wonder if he would ever have a friend, ever, because in his mind, friendships are very transactional. You do as I say, and he wasn't always willing to then reciprocate either. And things like that. But now, yes, and I don't want to use academics as a measure, because it's just one. But yes, he's in a mainstream school, and he's doing really well with the support that he's got from his teaching assistants. He plays musical instruments. He's hugely into art and drama. So we do lots of creative activities, because that is where he is at his happiest. But essentially, by evolving our family life around his needs, it has meant that not only is he thriving as a young person, but as a family, we are living a full, wholehearted and joyful life, which I really believe is within the gift of every autism family, particularly in our communities, where often I feel parents feel that they are resigned to a life of survival, and it doesn't have to be like that.
So you live daily with Evie, and your husband, and you manage, and you put in place things that help you as a family, but also help Evie as well, so that he can survive and cope and enjoy life as well, because that's what life is about. We need to find ways to make sure, or try and, have more good days. I'd be reminiscent to say 100% of days will all be good days. But it'd be nice to have more good days than not so good days. So in terms of like challenges that you've faced, you've also already shared one. Were there any others that you have faced?
So challenges through his behavior, or challenges from other
The
people?
community, from the community.
Yeah. So I think a huge thing is the conformity element. So if you behave this way, you are a good child. You are labeled as a good child. If you behave that way, you are not a good child. And I think another. And I've had to kind of really push back on that. And what I tend to do a lot, because we still have these systems in place, for want of a better word, where we need to be. We're quite diplomatic when we speak to our elders. It's not easy to say to someone from a much older generation, particularly in a culture where there is no direct translation for the word autism. It's very difficult to then kind of take them to task on how they're speaking to your child. But what I do is role model how that child should be spoken to and what language should be used. And actually, it's incredible how they can see visually when you speak to your child in a particular way, lovingly, not from an obedience-led perspective, but from a needs-based perspective, how you can then engender that child's trust and compliance, if it needs to be compliance to do something or go somewhere, whatever it is you need to do. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing is also for us, I had to turn on my head. I had to really question what I believed to be a successful child, because the version I had in my head was very informed by my own parenting. So it's education, it's having these particular status, it's having all of that. That was the definition of success. And actually, I completely turned that on its head. And for me, success is a child that's rooted in emotional and mental well-being, that is feeling secure and safe within themselves to express how they're feeling in a safe way. And through doing that, that has been the route that has led to Evie doing so well in everything else.
No, and well done, because I think some parents would just be really quiet behind closed doors, not tell anyone, their friends, their neighbors, or even medical professionals, and then would just find themselves in a very lonely place, and probably just end up trying to deal with it all themselves and not doing it right, which would actually have an adverse effect on the child. Or, as I've heard recently, sometimes it's adults being diagnosed much later in life. And of course, when being diagnosed as an adult, there was shame attached to that I'm an adult, I can't have this condition or this condition. So I think it's so important just to be able to share with somebody, to tell somebody, and get the right support, management tools, and skills for yourself, not just the child or the adult that you're caring for, but the skills for yourself to feel confident that you can do this. Because that must have been quite a journey for yourself of, okay, what happens now? Would you be up for sharing any of that?
I mean, I had the diagnosis, and I walked out of the doctor's office, and it was like, now what? I don't even know what this is. What do I do? And that's one of the things that through the work I do, that's one of the gaps I want to plug, because it's really lonely. And actually, culturally, we're not great at asking for help, because we've got these, preconceptions that have been handed down over generation, that we should be self-sufficient and we should not share. We should share our celebration, but keep our difficulties to ourselves. And actually, that doesn't serve anybody. We need to get better at saying, this is hard, I need some help. And that's exactly what I did. I couldn't see any organizations around me that had people that looked like me or from my background that I could turn to for help. So I went to other organizations. But I went on an autism parenting course. I upskilled myself on understanding, what autism actually is, and then learning the different manifestations, the behavior, and then I was able to go, that's why he does that. That's why he doesn't like going to the supermarket. That's why he screams when a siren goes past. It was a real light bulb moment, and for that, I think from there, that was when the seed was planted that everyone should be able to access this sort of knowledge, but doesn't have to be secretly. We need to open up the dialogue so that it's okay. You can walk in. I'm very proactive. I go wherever I go, to anyone's house, to a religious ceremony, wherever. One of the first things I'll tell them beforehand is, Evie's autistic, so this is what I'll need, or this part might not be suitable, and he might be here or I might be there. But we need to feel comfortable about people disclosing that to us, and be able to offer support, not sympathy. People don't want sympathy, they want the support.
So I've been getting questions coming in from people who've been watching the various interviews that we've been doing. And I've been asked the question a few times now, like, what is neurodiversity? What is neurodivergent? What is neurodiverse? And I wondered if you'd be happy to share your thoughts from your experience, because there does seem to be different interpretations where you look and who you speak to. So from your experience, what do those words mean to you?
Yeah, so this is by no means the Oxford Dictionary definition, but essentially, neurodiversity is a term that was coined by the Australian sociologist Judy Singer back in the late 1990s. And I think it was really significant, actually, because historically, neurodiverse conditions have always been looked at through a pathological medical model. So essentially, there's a difference, and that difference needs it's against the norm, therefore it will need curing through medication or other therapies. And so it's very much historically we've looked at neurodiversity as something which, that if people have it, they need fixing. And what neurodiversity has done as a term and as a movement is actually help people to see that there is a real richness in the diversity of human brains and minds, and an infinite variation of neurocognitive functioning within our species, which is actually essential to the survival of our species as well. But actually, it's also the source of incredible creative potential. So, it could be, you could look even from a business point of view. There was a report done by McKinsey back in 2020 that said those companies which are diverse are more likely than ever now to outperform non-diverse companies on profitability. So there's a real understanding starting to be had that actually there is so much beauty in the divergent mind. And what I mean by that is essentially it's a different wiring. So it's seeing the brain and the way it's wired as, as different. And those differences can manifest in different ways. So you may have, for example, autism, which, can be characterized through sometimes difficulties in social interaction or repetitive sort of thinking or tasks. And there's also ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There's dyspraxia, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. There's Erland syndrome. There's Tourette's, and there's others. I don't think there is a definitive list because there's different ones. Essentially, each of those will have different characteristics in how, around patterns of behavior or how the brain is functioning, so that certain tasks might be more challenging. But actually what we're coming to see now is those minds usually have another element which makes them hugely more, either call it productive or talented, or have an aspect of them which is of huge benefit to society, to the world, to industry, and beyond. Does that answer the question?
No, it absolutely does. It does. And I think what I wanted to do was hear it from rather than me saying, right, this is what the Collins Dictionary says, but actually from somebody who has, been on some training, has educated herself, but importantly is living it, is living this daily. So I think it's great. You've responded in a great way. You've made it more practicable in terms of clear English, and I think more people will definitely understand that there are many of us around who do. And I think there was probably a time when I sort of thought, I wonder with the way that I'm behaving and the way that I have these spurts of energy, and then I'm like, oh God, I can't do anything. And is there something, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there's many others. I've heard parents and grandparents tell me that it was when the child was diagnosed, they saw in themselves, my God, that's me. That's been me. And nobody told me this. And they've suddenly realized that actually they needed to get some help and support around it. So, no, thank you. Because I think it's important that we hear um, not necessarily what the Collins English Dictionary tells us. And doing my research, I've read various documents and been reading books, and I'm like, yeah, these have got lots of long words in it. And I just, can you brain this down to some really basic English that is going to help everyone? Now, the other thing that really inspires me by what you do is around the brown Asian ethnic minority. I was speaking to Tina Cad earlier. She's an Asian speech and language therapist, and that's one of her kind of legacies that she wants to leave behind, is that she wants to get more Asian speech and language therapists, you know, doing the job that she does, because she's realized that out there in the medical world, a lot of material and guidance is in English, or it depicts Caucasian scenarios. Is there anything you're doing through the work that you're doing to go out and really share what it's like being an Asian woman, and what it's like for Evie being, a young Asian boy?
Yeah, I think certainly from the parent perspective. So the parent workshops that I run look at our cultural conditioning and look at how the way we were parented is impacting how we're showing up for our children, and how sometimes that can jar with the parent that our child needs us to be, and how we shift into that space of moving from victim to advocate. And so yeah, and that's why I do it. Actually, in particular, I focus on Black, Asian and minority ethnic families, because not only is there a higher prevalence, but all the data tells us that the interventions are instituted for our children later, which means that their future path is hampered by the fact that they're not getting the help they need as early as when they should be able to access it. And some of that involves us as parents and carers being able to harness our voice and coming from a place of feeling strong, essentially, to be able to then go and knock on those doors and say, hey, you need to do this for my child because this is what they're entitled to. And I think until we harness that power within ourselves, we're never going to have that voice. If we're sitting in shame, we're never going to be able to amplify our voice. So we need to understand ourselves, understand our cultural conditioning, and then look at, okay, how do we make our child's life as rich and full as it possibly can be? Because that is the power essentially that we have within our hands as parents and carers. I also talk to workplaces and do corporate presentations and talks about how they can support their employees who have autistic children, who are also from the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community, as well as doing anti-racism and intersectionality training, because I don't think you can look at just neurodiversity without acknowledging the systemic racism that there is in society through health education and social care. So I think the two come very hand in hand together, as well as working with schools to look at how they can engage Black, Asian and minority ethnic parents more, instead of defaulting to the narrative that these are families that are hard to reach, because they're not. You just have not developed the dialogue and the cultural understanding to be able to reach them.
And it's quite interesting because, as you know, I'm quite keen on getting a lot of this awareness and education into kind of ground roots, school education, school, teacher curriculums, in the workplace, learning and development courses, you know, everything that's going to just help, whether it's a school or an organization, be a better version of themselves so that they can support their employees, they can import the school children, the parents, the community, but also themselves to be more aware, educated, and understanding of the world around us. Because let's be honest, the world is so diverse, and actually, we shouldn't be looking at that as, oh my God, the world is so diverse. We should be looking at it as, let's celebrate how diverse the world is. But we just have to be a little more understanding, and that comes from awareness and education. And it
Mm.
shouldn't come from a place of fear. And I think that's what happens for a lot of people. It's a place of fear, whether it's fear of telling people or whether it's fear of seeing something and not quite understanding. So it's not linear by all means. It's kind of almost a bit spaghetti junction, I think, where these almost pointers will come into all of our lives. So thank you for really being honest and sharing your story as well, because I think it's going to help many who are watching now, as well as those who will watch later, um, resonate for many. A little bit more of a maybe of a trigger that they need to go and find out some more as well. But also, if anyone does have any questions, you can always ask now or you can ask later. And Reena and I will keep an eye on the chat and make sure that we answer those questions later. So let's talk about journaling. What do you think about journaling? Do you think it's a waste of time, or do you think it's useful to do?
You know, I won't disclose my age, but it wasn't until very long ago I was introduced to journaling. So it's quite late in my life. I was introduced to it by my fantastic coach, Nadia Patel, and I had never actually done it before. And I'd gotten a journal and I'd started. And after I started, I realized how important it is and what I'd been missing out on, to the point that now my children both have iterations of journals. And I say iterations because I think as an adult, for me, what it did was, in a life that is very full on and busy, whether I'm mumming or whether I'm working or doing something else in one of my other various capacities, it forced me, but in a non-aggressive way, to sit down and actually reflect on how I was feeling and what, to me, had almost lifted my energy that day, and maybe what I wasn't feeling so great about. And it's really easy. I think it's shocking how easy it is to pass through life without checking in on how you're feeling. And all of that residual emotion, it's going to leak out somewhere. So if by actually tapping into how we're doing, we can proactively engineer our lives for happiness and success, rather than drift through it as if there's some external force carrying us. And just to touch on the point where I said iterations, I think, so after I discovered the huge benefit of it, I was really keen that the kids, both my two children who are now 6 and 9, were doing something similar. And so there are, they have, they do it creatively through images and drawings. So it doesn't have to be through writing. Not everybody is a writer. Some people choose to I know friends who mind map their thoughts and feelings for the day. Other people who draw, could be stick figures, or, other people who write. But journaling doesn't have to be the stereotypical Monday through to Sunday, this is how much it is. And, it doesn't have to look like that. I think we've really come a long way in what journaling can look like for each of us.
Absolutely. I remember when I first said to somebody, well, I journal by vocalizing. I was talking to Tina this morning and I was saying to Tina, my dear dogs, Neo and Ree, hear my day constantly, whether it's good or bad. And if I don't mention both of their names, the other one will woof in the middle. But or my husband, who won't woof, of course. But we all have to find our way, and whether that, as you said, whether that's writing, doodling, it could, if you can't write and you can't doodle, it might just be scribbling, and that's fine as well. Another thing I've heard a parent tell me is how their child uses colours. So for them, if they picked up the red, then it's kind of already known for that child. Because for me, for example, red is my favorite color. It doesn't necessarily mean anger for me. So there's almost an element of just understanding, or it may be that you train your child to say that, you know, if it's not a good day, we'll use this color, and if it's been a good day, use this color. So there are so many ways that you can be sharing what's happened in your day, but it's about finding the right thing for you. And you know, as diverse as we all are, it's so important that it might be, you might think, oh well, it's always going to be spoken, but it doesn't mean there may not be a day that I want to write.
Yeah.
So it is so important in terms of journaling. So you thankfully were part of my focus group for putting together the journal, for which I must say thank you, because without yourself and the other members of the focus group, the journal wouldn't look as it does now, even down to the colours, the branding, the order of questions, the quotes, and you're even in the journal having. I pinched a quote. You were talking one day when we were going through things, and I was like, I like that. I quickly wrote it down. And you are in there as well, and the mandalas and the, you know, the spare pages at the back. All of that has been guidance from you and other members of the focus group. So for that, I, you know, publicly want to say thank you. And I want to know, are you as excited as I am about the launch?
Of course, of course. I think particularly, you know, as the parent of a neurotypical and a neurodivergent, a child who's neurodivergent, what I like about it is that it doesn't have that linear structure, that it has to be, you know, only, you know, every single day and, you know, Monday to Friday, etc. And actually there's the creative freedom in there to choose the outlet that best serves either of those children to express how they're feeling. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. And again, thank you so much for being part of it, because one thing I've known in life, if you try and do things solo, you might produce something, but if you do it together with the right experts around you, you produce something that's so much better and so much more useful, and that you know, people get better value from it as well and benefit from it, which at the end of the day is what I want. Because once we find a way individually, a way to actually take out of us what has happened, both
Mhm.
the good and the not so
Mhm.
good, it ultimately supports our mental health as well. So
Absolutely.
this is why it's so important to find the right avenue that works for you.
Yeah.
So thank you. I really, really do appreciate it.
You're
Now, I
welcome.
haven't told anyone who I've been interviewing that there's a little quick fire round at the end, um, because I've got to make it fun as well. So I'd like to know, uh, what is your favourite animal and why?
What do I love? I think for me, my most favorite animal would have to be the elephant. I just love elephants. I always have. I think there's an association with India that I love. They are hugely. I love the juxtaposition of the size, but the grace of
Mm.
them, which I always feel like I'm in the presence of majestic beauty when I see an elephant.
Oh, that's amazing. No, that's beautiful. And actually, hearing you say it, I just thought of an elephant, and I just thought, yeah, absolutely, they are huge. And when I stand next to one, I look like a little ant. Um, but yeah, when they walk, there is, isn't there? There's that real, yeah, no, I love that. And I think I know what the answer to this is, but I'm still going to ask it. If you could change one thing in the world so that it would be a better place, what would that be?
I would say if everybody could see one another through the lens of humanity, then there would be no room for us to judge one another on the basis of external um, characteristics, whether that's disability, race, or any other lens. We would just all see each other as co-conspirators, compatriots on this journey that is life, and life would be so much richer for it.
I love that answer. And I think it's so important that we need to stop going, oh, look, that person's like that person's like that. And we actually just need to go, oh, look, there's a human, there's a human, there's a human. Much better place it would be. And then, final question, who is your favorite superhero and why?
Am I allowed to say, Effie, here's
Of
my
course, you can.
superhero?
Yeah,
That,
absolutely.
honestly, I am so I mean, I love both my children. I feel like I've given Ishan no airtime in this interview, but fair enough. There's a reason for that. But Evie he has shown me the beauty of a creative mind, and how when you set up structures to nurture that, instead of trying to suppress it, actually it's just phenomenal. I'm like wowed on a daily basis by something he'll say or think, and he makes me question even my language. Why did you say I had an option to do this when actually you want me to do that? Why don't you just say you want me to do that? And he'll call me up on it. And all of the things that we just do as neurotypicals instinctively, like we use flowery language, or we try to make it look like a forced choice, but really we want them to go do that thing over there. He just calls me out on it, and it's made me really strip back and think about, okay, what is it that I want you to do? Why do I want you to do it? Is it to fulfill my ego, or is it because actually there's some benefit for you that I can see doing? And I love that, because it's made me really question myself and my values and beliefs, and really live in a much more authentic way. So he's definitely my superhero.
And I think it would be only right to give you some airtime, to give a little shout out to your other son. Go for it.
Oh, Ishan is lovely. He's 6 and he just loves pizza and chocolate and Octonauts.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ishan. Love you lots. Reena, thank you so much for being with me today and being part of my journey for the journal as well, and becoming a good friend as well in this journey. And I know that you will pull me up if you ever see me doing something that starts becoming flowery. So, and I give you full on permission to do that, because I want to be able to make sure that when I'm communicating, when I'm helping, when I'm supporting, that I'm doing it in a way that's real, and it's in a way that it's understandable, and not trying to get people to do something that I don't want them to do at the end of the day. But thank you so much. As I said earlier, if anyone does have any questions for Reena, you can either put them in any of the chats on social media and we will reply. But also, I will shortly be sending out the details of Reena, and there will be her details of how you can contact her directly as well. If you are an Asian parent, and whether you have a child who has a neurodiverse condition, or you're looking after an adult, or you're a carer, or you just want to find out some more, because you never know, your child may end up having a best friend who has a neurodiverse condition, then do reach out to Reena, have a chat, and see if it's a workshop you need to attend, or whether it's you can get Reena into your school, and that way the whole of the school can benefit as well, or the organization that you work in. Reena, thank you so much. I'm going to retire you to the waiting room as I say bye to everyone, and then I will be back to have a chat very shortly.
Thank you.
So everyone, that was Reena Anand, a really awesome, beautiful lady, and who could have just kind of shut the door to life and said, well, that's it. This is what my life is going to be like with Evie. But no, she pushed that door open, went out, reached out, educated herself, became more aware, and now she's actually going out and actually sharing her story and what she has learned with so many other people. And I think many of you should be going out and reaching out to Reena, so that you can learn, become more aware, educated, and understanding, and you can then share that message as well. So thank you again, Reena. As a gentle reminder, the journals are now on Amazon, and you can go and buy them there. The links are all on my socials. If you do want to enter the competition, then just send me the little receipt. There is a link for the form as well. And on Monday, I will be picking somebody who will be winning one of my online courses free of charge. I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Reena Anand, and I will be back again tomorrow. Thank you everyone for watching now, and for everyone who will be watching on